you can wait, please, because I prepared some cool stuff. So
don't leave the stream, people. Stay here.
Yeah, I will move it on the screen here. Okay, and now it should be good. So let's see. Once again, share the screen, and this one. Start sharing.
Yeah,
Okay.
there we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good
Great.
luck.
Yeah, of course. Let me. Okay. So hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining my session, and I really apologize for those technical issues, but it happens, especially when there is a live event. So thank you so much for waiting, and thank you for joining my session, which is called New .NET Azure SDK in Action. And during this session, I would like to show you some cool stuff related with new Azure.NET SDK, because everything has changed, and there are some cool functionalities I think that you should know as Azure developers. But before that, let me quickly introduce myself. This was also done by Susan, but let me quickly go through this slide, because for me, it's very important for you to know that if you have any questions, do not hesitate to contact me either on Twitter or LinkedIn. And I also encourage you to visit my technical blog, techmindfactory.com. So that's it about me, because right now I would like to start talking about Azure SDK. So the first question is, what is happening with Azure SDK? So I'm sure that some of you are familiar with the current one, with the current version of the Azure SDK. And it doesn't matter if I'm talking about .NET SDK, I'm talking about the Python SDK, Java SDK. It's about Azure SDK and how we as a developers interact with Azure. And the crucial part is that I have to start with bad news, that there were some issues with Azure SDK. And even it's great SDK, even there are some cool features in the current SDK, there are some issues. And I think that it's good to know them, it's good to mention them, to know what's happening next, because there will be changes, as I mentioned at the end of this presentation. So when talking about those issues, there were multiple. Not as many as we can imagine, but still. So the first issue was related with patterns, and patterns applied during the development and inconsistent coverage. So when we look on the old Azure SDK, we will see some inconsistency. So if I look on the Java version and on the SDK and on the .NET version, there are some differences, and the idea is that, okay, that's fine, but we should somehow align those versions for different languages to make sure that every developer that starts the journey with Azure SDK will be familiar with the same concepts. So right now there was this inconsistency, and that was a quite issue. There was also no clear contract with reference to those SDK libraries. So if we look on the different versions for different Azure services like Azure Blob Storage or Azure Service Bus, or I don't know, for some other services in Azure, we will see that there is no clear contact among them. So it's really crucial to mention this issue. And at all, what I can say, it was auto-generated and not fully covered in the documentation. So sometimes it was hard to find information about documentation. So how I can use, for instance, Azure Blob Storage SDK, or how I can connect with the Key Vault, because there were some multiple versions and I'm not sure how to do it, either in Java, in Python, or in .NET. So Those issues were addressed by the Azure SDK team, and I'm really happy about this because this is good. This is something crucial that if we as developers report some issues and we will talk about those issues, they will be fixed. And this is what is happening right now with the Azure SDK. So what I can see working with this SDK right now, there is a full concentration on developers' productivity and ease of use. And this is really important because we as developers, we want to easily build things. We don't want to struggle in the documentation. We want to work fast. And this is something what is the main principle of the new version of Azure SDK. So let me show you some main principles related with Azure SDK. Together with some interesting links. I think that those links will be interesting for you, and I will show them in the browser at the end. But the main principles are productivity. So the developer productivity, as I mentioned, is the primary objective for the new Azure SDK version. The second thing is related with different languages. So if we look on the Java, on Python, on .NET, each language has some specific features, but it's good to have idiomatic Azure SDK. This SDK is following principles between different languages. And it's a natural language experience and standard package managers. So this is really important. And the second principle is consistency here. So we would like to have, as a developers, a similar experience across services and languages. So if I use Azure Blob Storage SDK, or if I use Azure Key Vault SDK, I would like to see quite similar experience. Just to know that, okay, right now I will use Blob Storage and connect to it, but then I will have to implement, for instance, connection with the Event Hub, and probably I would like to do it in the similar way I did it before. So that's why the consistency is the main principle here also. And of course, approachable. So we would like to quickly get started. I don't know how about you, but I like building fast. So I like to open documentation, see the clear explanation, and I just want to work. I just want to focus on my goal. Yeah. So my business objective in the application. So I don't want to struggle in the documentation, learning this thing and using it, because at the end it will be really hard for other developers from my team. So that's why approachable is also main principle related with the new Azure SDK. And of course, two more principles: diagnosable, so easy observe applications. So we would like to know what's happening. It's really crucial, especially in the distributed systems. When we design our cloud native applications, we would like to know what's happening inside this application. So if we have any issues, problems related with our source code or connection to the Azure services, we would like to quickly discover what's happening and then fix those issues quickly. So this is why also diagnosable is the main principle of new Azure SDK. And at the end, dependable. So high quality, avoiding breaking changes. Yeah. So the idea here is just to provide the new version of the library, for instance, for the Azure Key Vault, but to not provide breaking changes, so we can be sure that, okay, this is version 1.0 and this is version, I don't know, 2.0, and everything is quite similar. So that's why those main principles are crucial and related with the new Azure SDK. And there are also some links, as you can see on the slide, and I will show you those links because they are connected with the new Azure SDK guidelines. And right now, I would like to also mention some general available libraries, so you can use them right now, and they are related with the new Azure SDK. So right now, what we have as developers for our applications, SDK for Azure Blob file shares and queues. So we can use storage SDK to connect to the Azure Blob Storage, for instance, to implement upload, download of files in our applications. We can use Azure Key Vault SDK in our applications. And this is really cool feature. I will show it soon in my presentation because there is a consistent way in connecting to Key Vault using this Azure SDK. And of course, some other SDKs like Event Hubs, App Configuration, Cosmos DB, right now for the JavaScript and TypeScript, and Azure Identity and Azure Core. So those libraries below, Azure Identity and Core, I would say they are like a basic pillar of all above libraries. And I will also talk about them. And there are also some libraries in preview, and you can check them right now if you want. Those are libraries for Azure Cosmos DB, for .NET, Python, and Java, Cognitive Services, Text Analytics, Storage Data Lake, and Cognitive Search. And I really encourage you to check all those packages. They are available under the link you see below on this slide, so aks.ms/AZSDK list. And if you go to this link, you will see the new .NET packages. And this is really cool because we can filter new libraries and we can filter all libraries. So it's really easy to use this new website. And as you can see, there are four columns. Apologize. We have the service name, like for instance, Azure Identity or Azure Core. We have a package column, documentation, and source. So we can go directly to the NuGet and see the package available for download. We can see the documentation related with the single package, and also we can see the source code on GitHub. Because it's worth to mention that Azure SDK is open source project, so you can see what's happening inside, and it's really helpful in some points. Okay, so with reference to the new Azure SDK for .NET, because during this session I will concentrate on the .NET Azure SDK. There are some I would say crucial basics related with new Azure SDK, and right now it's called building blocks. And what's that? As you remember on the previous slide, I mentioned that we have Azure Identity and Azure Core below here and those libraries are generally available. And those libraries are the building blocks. So other libraries can be related with them and use with them. So let me explain it because I don't want to confuse you. So the first one is Azure Core. So Azure Core contains some shared primitives, abstractions, and some helpers that are related with new Azure SDK client libraries. So if you for instance you will use Azure Blob Storage SDK, you will probably find out that inside you are using also Azure Core. And the main shared concepts of Azure Core is related with some cool features like configuration service clients, so we can configure retries. So if my request failed when connecting to the Azure Blob Storage, I can easily retry this request, either after some period, after 2 seconds, for instance, or in the exponential backoff way. So I will retry the connection after 2 seconds, then after 4 seconds, and then after 8 seconds. Also, Azure Core provides a cool feature which enables you to access HTTP response details. And not only responses, but also requests. And we can also see here some cool features related with long-running operations and paging and asynchronous streams, of course, which is a cool new feature in the C#. But what is the most important thing here also, I think, is related with exceptions. Because right now in the Azure Core, there are exceptions for reporting errors from services requests in a consistent fashion. So you can be sure that Whether you use Azure Key Vault SDK, Azure Event Hub SDK, you can easily access exceptions and information inside them. So it's much easier to see what's happened. And of course, Azure Core provides some abstractions for representing Azure SDK credentials, which is a really cool feature in the new Azure SDK, and I will show you that in a minute. The second building block is Azure Identity. And Azure Identity implements common authentication flows. So it's really nice. I will show it today in the source code. There is something what is called default Azure credentials. So let me explain it in the words. If we have an application and we're running this application on the local host and we would like to connect to the Azure services, probably we would like to use our developer account. So in this case, we can use shared token cache credential, for instance. And then we will use our development account, which is related with Azure, and we can easily access Azure services without providing any credentials in the source code. The same is related with managed identity credentials, and this one is really cool because if we set managed identity in Azure, for instance, for Azure Web App, this default Azure credential will discover this managed identity, see, for instance, if this managed identity is privileged to access secrets in the Key Vault, and then it will automatically authenticate. So it's really cool. I will show you that, but the case here is to mention that Azure Identity provides many great features and options to authenticate to Azure services in one consistent way. And this is really important to mention. And also, when talking about the building blocks and Azure Core, I mentioned that Azure Core implements some common cloud patterns like HTTP pipeline, retry, authentication, as mentioned before, logging. So I would like to show you what's happening in the HTTP pipeline, because this is really cool feature available in the Azure SDK. So what's happening here? Let's say that we have client requests. So we would like to access a secret in the Azure Key Vault, or we would like to download Azure Blob, so like PDF file from the Azure Blob storage. So then there is a transport layer, and what we can do, we can attach the client request ID. So unique ID related with this client request. Then in the pipeline, we can authenticate this request. So I mentioned before that we have those different options to authenticate to Azure services, and this is one of the features related with the HTTP pipeline. We can authenticate this request. Then we can enable logging in the pipeline. And this is really cool feature because I can see what's happening when I'm connecting to Azure services directly. So I can see that, okay, what is the address of the Azure Blob storage where I'm connecting? What is the parameter name? Did I authenticate successfully or not? Everything I can check in this pipeline. And of course, distributed tracing for more advanced applications. So once this request is sent to Azure, as you can see, of course, there is a response. And with together with the request and response, we have also this, for the response, for the response, we can enable buffer response. So we can access partially the response, and also we can enable retry pattern for the request. So if the request failed, so it failed to, I don't know, pull secrets from the Azure Key Vault or failed to authenticate with Key Vault, we can enable retry, and this request will be sent after some amount of time. And also, what we have here is something what is called policy, and those policies can be per call and per retry. And I would like to show you this right now, but this is the HTTP, but the general overview is visible on this slide. So it's really cool because as you can see, we have more control over the request and response sent to Azure services. And it's really cool because at the end, uh, build those connections. As you can see, we have those building blocks. I can add authentication, I can add logging, I can add retry, and everything is like a building block. And I can set up this in my application to easily track what's happening. Okay, but I think that the best option to describe what's happening in the new Azure SDK is just to see it. So that's why I will just go to the Visual Studio right now, just to present what's happening and what cool features are available. The first sample here I prepared is related with accessing Azure Blob Storage and also Key Vault. And this is a smart example of using the new Azure SDK together with policies. So let me show you what's happening here. First of all, I would like to show you which NuGet packages I used in this ASP.NET Core application. As you can see, we have Azure Security.KeyVault .secrets, Azure.storage.blobs, and Microsoft.extensions.azure. And so the first package is related with accessing Key Vault and provides the SDK to control access to Key Vault. The second package is related with Azure Blob Storage to upload, download files in the new way. And Microsoft Extensions Azure, this is the library which you can use together with ASP.NET Core applications to easily integrate Azure SDK in the dependency injection way. So that's really cool feature. Let me show you that. So 3 packages. I will also show at the end of the session how to find those packages and how to play with them. So let me show you the startup class, first of all. So we have configure services method, which is like a standard method for registering services in the dependency injection container in the ASP.NET Core. And here we have register dependencies extension method. And if I go to that, you can see that I have 2 methods, configure app settings and register dependencies. What I also have in my application settings development, let me show you quickly, is the URL to Key Vault and blob storage container name. And as you can see, there are no credentials in the source code. And also, I do not have any credentials, as you can see, in the environment variables. So I can be sure that if this source code will be pushed to the repository, there will be no credentials stored in the source code. That's I think that's really important also to mention. So let me show you what's happening here. What we have. So first of all, what I'm doing here, there is a basic configuration of app settings. So I'm just checking whether blob storage settings section is available. And let me zoom in right now. Okay, I think that it should be better. What's happening here? I'm just accessing the blob storage settings section from the local settings JSON, and I'm adding those settings as a singleton to the dependency injection and container. And then what's happening here? Let me show you. This is the cool stuff about this new Azure SDK. I have an extension method called add Azure clients. And as you can see inside this method, I'm accessing Azure Client Factory Builder. And here I'm using token credentials. In this case, default Azure credential. And this is something what I mentioned on the slides, that right now we have possibility to authenticate to Azure services in the more consistent and easy way. So what's happening here? The default Azure credential here will try to access, there is a pipeline, as you remember I mentioned. Let me display this slide once again here. So first of all, Azure default credential, we try to use environment credential. So it will try to find like Azure Client ID, secret tenant ID to authenticate with the service principal. Then it will try to authenticate with managed identity. If no managed identity is presented, it will try to use shared token cache credential. So like a developer account registered in Azure. And also there are some other possibilities. So right now, what I have here for the local development, I'm using service principal. So I registered a new service principal in the Azure portal, and I have client ID, tenant ID, and secret. And those credentials are stored in the secret manager of ASP.NET Core. So I'm not storing those the environment credentials, as I mentioned before, in the in the environment settings in the launch settings JSON file. And so if I'm debugging locally, I'm using those client secret credentials. But if my application is deployed to Azure, I'm using default Azure credential, as you can see. So if debug, I'm using client secret credential. And then I have this credential here as a variable. And what I'm doing in the next line, there is a builder add secret client. And this is really cool feature because here I'm adding access to the Azure Key Vault secrets and to Azure Key Vault also. As you can see, here is method add secret client. And inside this method, I'm passing the URL to my Key Vault, which is stored in the app settings development JSON here. So I'm passing this URL to my Azure Key Vault, which is in my Azure portal. Let me display it quickly. So this is my Key Vault here, and this is the URL address of this Key Vault. And I'm passing this address here, and then what I can do, I can create a new secret client with the new Azure SDK. Here, what I have also, I can configure options. As you can see, I can configure retries. So if I'm not able to connect to the Azure Key Vault at the first time, I will try to retry this I will try to retry the connection to the Azure Key Vault 3 times. And the second line is connected with the authentication. So what I'm doing here, I'm just passing credential variable to with credential method. And what will happen here on the local host, I will show it right now. On the local host, it will use client secret credential. So the credentials are I stored locally in the secret manager. But if I will push this application in the Azure to the Azure, it will use default Azure credentials and manage identity. And right now, if I register this secret client here, what I can do, I can then access secrets from the Key Vault. I just put it here to make it simple and visible. I'm just accessing secret client, which is from the Azure SDK, as you can see. And once I access the secret client, I can get secret with the name. So blob storage connection string here. Let me check it. Yeah. Okay, so if I go here to the secrets, you will see that I have blob storage connection string. If I display the value here, yeah, I have the connection string to my blob storage. So in this case, I can avoid storing any credentials in the source code because what I can do, I can pass only the URL to the Azure Key Vault and then get all secrets from the Key Vault. So that's really interesting, and I think that if you care about security of your applications, you should definitely check this feature of Azure SDK. And then once I have this secret from the Key Vault, it's really easy to register a blob client here. So what's happening here? Let me show you add blob service client method implementation here. There is a connection string parameter in the constructor. So what I can do, I have this secret and I can pass this secret here to the constructor, and also I can configure some options, as you can see. So what I can do here, I can set the retry to 10. I can delay retries with 3 seconds here. I can enable logging. I will show you that in a minute. I can also provide application ID, which will be the unique ID of my app just to trace. And if I launch this application right now on the local host, let me do it quickly, I hope. Yeah, this is my application, the console. It should also it should also display the browser. Okay, great. Here is the browser. Yeah. So this is my application. And what I will do right now here, I will go to the Azure portal. And I would like to show you that on the blob storage here, I have one file, which is sample PDF. So I will go to the container, file container. As you can see, the name was in the settings, files container. And what I will do here, I will just show you that there is sample PDF. And what I can do in the browser here, I can type file, file name sample PDF. And I can call the new Azure SDK blob client. And as you can see, this is the dummy PDF file just to show you that, as you can see, I accessed blob storage without storing any credentials in the easy way, only by registering this blob storage client here in my extension method. And what is also really cool is the fact that if I look on the console, you can see that we have some logs related with this request. So for instance, we can see that there was 409 error returned that the specific container already exists, which is true. I can also see that we are sending the request to this URL. What I can also do, I can see some other parameters, and you can also have a question, what is this reducted in the authorization? So some parameters in the login are set by default, but you can add extended login and you can include more details in the login. But all those default parameters are just marked as reducted. So you can enable additional logs for authorization, for instance. I didn't do it, so it's displayed as reducted. So as you can see, there is a whole console, and I can see exactly what's happening. I can see that in the response I have 200 OK status. I have some bytes here in my response, so it's really cool. And what I can also do here, let me disable that right now. What I can also do, I can publish this application to Azure right now. So not the client secret credential will be used, but default Azure credential and underneath manage identity. Let me show you that quickly. So in Azure here, I have Azure Web App. And this web application here, I can show you that it's running right now, as you can see. We have identity section, and this is a system assigned manage identity. And as you can see, I enable it, and I have object ID here. So this web application has own identity, and then if I go to the Azure Key Vault, I want to say that my application, this web application in Azure, will access secrets in the Key Vault. So here in the Key Vault, under access policies, as you can see, I registered my Azure web application here. Let me show you how I did it. I will just open another tab here, and let me load it quickly. Okay, great. So I have my web application, which is here, and I enabled identity here. I can copy this object ID. I can go to the access policies tab in the Key Vault. I can click add access policy. And here I have option to select principal. So which other Azure service, so just to describe this, which Azure service should have access to specific keys, secrets, or certificates in the Azure Key Vault. So here I can try to look for this this object ID, and as you can see, here is my app Azure Dev. It was already added, but I can select it just to show you. And here in the secret permissions, I can set get list and click add. And once I do it and click save button, it will appear here. And I can see that app Azure Dev has two permissions to access my get and list, to access and list my secrets from the Key Vault. So right now, if I publish this application to Azure, and let me do it right now, just to show that it's not a fake, I can click publish button here. And okay, build started. And what's happening right now, the application is being published to Azure as a web app. And in a few seconds, we should see the browser with the information that application is starting. So meanwhile, let me describe what will happen right now. Right now, once application is deployed to Azure, when, as you remember, we used this default Azure credential. Oh, has been the following location. Okay, let me try once again. That happened. It's the live stream, so it can happen. Okay, publish succeeded right now. Okay. Okay, as you can see, application is published. And again, what I can do here, I can go to the API /file name equals sample PDF. And as you can see, the PDF is displayed directly from the Azure Blob Storage. So I didn't include any credentials in the source code. Here, my app settings and local settings JSON, as you can see, they do not store any credentials here. And also, what is important to mention is the fact that I can configure some policies I mentioned on the slides. So let me show you those policies quickly. There is a concept called HTTP pipeline policy, and with this policy applied, I can access the information related with the request and response related with the connection to Azure services here. And I call this simple tracing policy here, which derives from HTTP pipeline policy. And then in the service collection, I can register it. But first, let me show you what's happening here. There is a method called process async, as you can see. And what I can do here, I can access the HTTP message of my request to the Azure service. And what I can do, I can, for instance, add a custom header with this line. I can then process the message and get the information about the response. So I can see the status of this response, I can see the method used and URI also. And I can use this pipeline policy. Let me show you. I can use this pipeline policy in my source code here. So what I can do, let me show you that. Let me uncomment this one. What I can do, I can use extension method add policy, and here I can get register policy and say that, okay, I would like to use this policy per call. So every time the request is sent to the Azure service, I will use this simple tracing policy to see what's happening with the request and response. And this is really helpful and powerful because we can, as you can see, we can extend this logging. So we can create a separate class. We can store the source code related with the logging. Okay, so let me briefly jump in to the presentation, because I have a few more slides. Yeah, here. I would like to also mention a few things about Azure Developer Templates, the project I started on the GitHub, and I really hope that you will find it interesting and helpful. It's available under the link below, or if you type in the Google Azure Developer Templates, you will probably find this library. And in this project, here, what I did, I tried to collect. Let me show you. Interesting samples related with using Azure SDK, the new one. So there are, of course, some samples using the previous version, but what I'm doing right now, each time there is a new library available in the Azure SDK website, I will just add another sample here. So let me show you that quickly. So for instance, I have Azure Event Hub SDK with ASP.NET Core. And here I have information that this is the sample project, how to use Azure Event Hub SDK, and how to receive events using Azure Event Hub. And I'm listing here the packages used. So in this case, it's Azure Messaging Event Hubs here. And there is also a code sample preview, how it's implemented. And at the top, you have a full link to my GitHub repository. The second thing is that in the documentation related with new Azure SDK I presented before, and you can find it on my Twitter, for instance, there is information, there is a website related with Azure SDK, and there is information about recent releases of the SDK, and important information about design guidelines. So if you go through this documentation, you will find out that there is a great description about design principles, for instance, or how to use HTTP pipeline, how to use a specific SDK. So it's really cool. Yeah. So I really encourage you to visit this Azure GitHub IO Azure SDK. It's available as a GitHub repository. You can see this website, but also I really encourage you, and let me get back to presentation. I really encourage you to follow Azure SDK on Twitter. This is the Twitter handle here. Because here you will find information about the updates related with Azure SDK for all languages. So it's really important to mention that. So you will find interesting updates, and also you will find the link to the website I showed you. So to the guidelines. So aks.ms/Azure SDK site here. And let me get back to the guidelines here and open so as you can see, this is Azure SDK Twitter account, and you can just open it and follow what's happening. I see that recently great post was added, best practices for using Azure SDK. I'm really happy about it because this will be really helpful for developers. And at the end, what I would like to do also here at the end, before the Q&A, I would like to also open another sample to show you what's happening. This sample is related with Azure Q storage. So let me, I have it here. Yeah, just very quickly. This is one of the templates I presented before. It's available in the Azure Developer Templates on GitHub. Here you will find out how the new Azure SDK for Q storage is used. There are two classes important classes. As you can see, there is a queue messages sender service and queue messages receiver service. And inside those services, you will find out that the new queue client is used. And what is common among those different libraries here is the fact that the naming convention is similar. So here I have the queue client, but if I open, let me show you that. If I get back to the previous example I showed you and add Azure clients and add secret client here, you will see that there is a secret client. So this one is related with accessing Key Vault. So here we have secret client to access the Key Vault. And in the second sample, there is a queue client. So we can use it to send and receive messages. If I open this sample, just very quickly, and I know that I will have to end soon, just 3 minutes, and that's it. If I open this sample and enable launch the console app here, I prepared the console app to send messages to my queue. So this is the console application where queue client is used, and this queue client is sending new messages, and there is delay 5 seconds between messages. If I open the console for my ASP.NET Core application, you can see that here I'm sending new messages, and new messages are received in my ASP.NET Core application. So everything is stored in the Azure Developer Templates I mentioned before. So I really encourage you to visit it. If you have any ideas how it can be extended, as I mentioned before, it's open source. I really encourage you to contact me. I'm happy to include some other samples here. This sample I'm showing you is available also in Azure Developer Templates. The first one you will find in the Azure Clients integration here. This is the last one. And this is the sample I showed you how to use Azure SDK together with dependency injection in ASP.NET Core. And also there is a sample with queue storage I showed just a second before. This is Azure Storage Queues SDK with ASP.NET Core. Also, this sample is available on GitHub. So I encourage you to visit it. If you have any questions or remarks, do not hesitate to contact me either on Twitter or LinkedIn, as I mentioned before, and follow Azure SDK on Twitter. Okay, so thank you so much. That's it from my side. Not much time, but I hope that that it was interesting for you and you found value in this presentation and enjoyed it as much as I did. And if you have any questions, just please ask. If not, if you have any other questions after the session, you can ask them on Twitter.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you.
Yeah, we need to go to a short break momentarily because, well, I get my little one brings me pizza.
Yeah, you got
so
it.
this is a hint. But thank you very much. That was a really great resource because I find it quite difficult to always keep track of all the changes and new stuff. And obviously you can't give a talk to me every time something changes. So I love your developer templates resource. One question is, can others also contribute to your GitHub?
Of course. If anyone would like to contribute, just create a pull request, and I'm really happy to include other samples from other people. So please do it.
Awesome.
Amazing. Thank you so much. We're going for a short break for about 10 minutes. So Mike can prepare for his session. Thank you very much, and see you in 10 minutes.
Thank you very much.
Daniel.
Bye.